Okay, so the last two sections that we've had, I've been talking a lot about sort of comparison and contrast of a variety of different art forms, the way that they come together, the way they contrast, which is a good thing. When we're talking about the way things come together in contrast, that is a lot different than when we say things come together in conflict with one another, meaning that they don't quite work together, or they are in some way working against one another. But when something comes together in contrast, it means that they are sort of a yin-yang kind of experience. It means that they are the chocolate and peanut butter kind of situation. They complement one another because of the differences, because they are not one and the same. And when we form collaborations in our careers, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for contrasting collaborators. We're looking for people who are approaching things from contrasting perspectives than we are, not conflicting, but contrasting. This is so that our ideas can be challenged, but at the same time, they are challenged in a way that is still compatible to our intentions. Without that, what ends up happening is we wind up going in the same circle. We don't move in any kind of forward momentum or direction. We wind up going in a circle in our careers. We wind up either repeating the work that we've been doing all along over and over, repeating ourselves, which is probably the worst thing that we can be doing, is just doing the same thing over and over again. Or maybe a little bit better is duplicating the things that we are seeing everybody else do. And that's okay, because at least you are sort of looking outward, or at least you're looking to something to sort of achieve. You're saying, hey, this is really excellent, maybe I could get there. But we know very well from the Rilke explanation that looking outward is absolutely the wrong thing to do, because you're looking for validation at that point. And really the best thing you could hope for by imitating someone you really, really admire, what's the best thing you could hope for is that what you do is mistaken for that person's work. You sound just like them, or your work looks exactly like them, or your writing is identical in terms of rhythm and tone. They're like, oh wow, that's just like this other person, and even so, you're mistaken as an imitator for that person. No matter how excellent the work is, it sort of falls into that category, and that's never a good thing for you. So it then comes back to where are you in all of that? Not necessarily the voice, as Ryan was talking about, finding your creative voice. There's lots of ways to kind of look at that. I like to look at it as identifying the things that are important to you so that you know what your intentions can be when you're creating something. If you don't know what's important to you, then you don't know what is not important to you. It's hard to identify those things if you don't know one or the other. Because if you know what's important to you, you can then start to identify when you are there. Like, it's hard to identify when something is satisfying when you don't know what satisfying means. You ever hear the kind of thing, I don't know what I'm looking for, but I'll know when I get there? Well, it's helpful if you know what you're looking for. If you know what your intent is, you still won't know until you get there what it is. But at least at the very least, you know what the intent is. The goal is going to happen whether you want it or not. Like I said, goals happen. Your intention is what you have control over. The goal is the achieving of the thing, and that usually has a lot to do with other extenuating circumstances, life and the 8 billion people in the world, and kismet and all of the other things that end up influencing this thing or that thing, just random, dumb chance. But your intention is always under your influence and under your control, and you don't want to give that away. So to identify this, it's all really about getting to know, like the turning inward, like getting to know, like, what is important to you, what are the important things that are meaningful to you, so that you can find a way to do those things. And how can those things service you in terms of allowing you to live? These are the answers for later on, for like finding, I guess, enriching and finding employment, finding things that are somehow rewarding to you. The money is not gonna sustain you, no matter how much. If that's what you're doing a thing for, it won't be enough. They'll pay you more and you'll get used to it, and then that won't be enough. And then they'll pay you more and you'll get used to it, and it won't be enough. It will be enough if the money is irrelevant necessarily. I mean, there's a certain point, but if the money really isn't what you're doing it for, it's because it's an enriching and it's a satisfying, and you get something out of it. That's what is important. And the only way you'll know is if you know what's important to you. What's important to you is what your work is about, and then you'll be able to identify what's good and what's not good. The translation from where you guys are going, which is the foundations, the 200 level into the upper division, this sort of movement into this part of the experience in university is really about transitioning from technique, from learning skill sets, from building the sort of framework for how to do things, into what are you doing it for, into the purpose for what it's supposed to serve. That doesn't mean we stop building skill sets. It just means that we need to identify where we're going to apply those skill sets even more specifically. Also, we want to begin to calibrate your sort of expectations in terms of where motivation is coming from. It really does need to come from you. Like the idea of where's the next project happening? What is the next thing that you're going to be doing? That, up until now, all your life, if you've been in school, like from, K through 12, and you went right to college, or even if you made a gap in there, for the most part, your life has been about fulfilling the expectations of an authority who says, do this work, you'll get a grade, or you do this work and you'll get satisfied and you'll get paid, and so on and so forth. You do this work, you'll be evaluated, and then you get to move on, right? The goal of 9th grade is to get to 10th grade, right? You do that by satisfying certain requirements, passing a test, writing a paper, so on. Who's telling you what things to do in order to satisfy those goals? A curriculum, an entire band of people who've gotten together and said, these are the things you have to do to get to this point. What happens when that's no longer there? When nobody is telling you, these are the things you need to do to live a satisfying life? Because there isn't anybody there. There isn't anybody there. Your parents are there, your friends are there, all the people to support you are there, and they can tell you what their experiences are, but the real truth is that you are the one who has to know those answers. You're the one who has to seek those answers. That's through experience. And that is the answer that I found. That's the answer to a lot of people that I've found that have told me. I wanted to know the same thing that you guys wanted to know, are gonna want to know when you finish your undergraduate, is what do I do now? Like, what's the next, where do I go? What's the next step that I do? A lot of recent graduates will say, I went to school, regardless of where they went, they paid all this money and they didn't learn how to get a job. And well, that makes sense. because the university isn't a place where you go to learn how to get a job. You go to the university to learn how to successfully navigate your life. Essentially, that's what the real purpose of a university is. You pick up skill sets, you pick up technological things, but the university is a place where you discover the things that are important to you so that then you can go and discover how you can then best serve your community, your people, and your environment. The university is always there for you, meaning that the support system, meaning all the people you went to school with, all of the people that were part of your education are always there for you. Like all of us, all the profs, we're all still here for everybody. You'll see alumni come through here quite often. We keep in touch with them. I still have people that I know from my university days, even it's now like 20 years, like 2001, so 22 years. So that's a long time, but there's still people that I communicate with. Not even still, there are lots of people that I still communicate from that time. That's the community. Those are the people that we work together and we support each other in terms of our careers. Some people have fallen away and like, this isn't for me. That's their choice. They have different they have a different identity of what successful is. Who's to say that just because they're not painting in a studio or singing on a stage or whatever, that they aren't living a successful and enriching life, and that the education and what they went through didn't influence that in a major way. No matter what you've done here, remember what Roka was saying. He said, even when you go into that sort of deep, dark place and ask yourself those questions, even if you come out and say, you know what, I really don't need to be doing this for the rest of my life. This isn't something that I need to carry with me all the time. I can find other things that are going to be more enriching to me. It still is not time wasted. You still have gone, into yourself and discovered things that are really important that others maybe weren't courageous enough to do. It's a really courageous thing to study this stuff, because it is asking you to do things that are really uncomfortable to do. It's asking you to ask yourself questions and delve into things that probably sometimes you don't want to get close to. You're like, well, I don't really want to ask myself those kinds of things, or I really don't want to get into that kind of stuff. Whatever that happens to be for you, the level of, I guess, integration on that stuff needs to be total and complete. Meaning you need to understand that to fully embrace creativity, you do have to do what Roka is saying. You have to be all in on it. Now, does that mean there is no distinction between your careers, your creative identity, and your life? No, that's not the answer. I know, rhetorical question. I hate it when I do that. It doesn't mean that that they can't be separated, that there isn't a boundary there. Right? For some people, there needs to not be a boundary. For some people, their life in totality has to be that creative world. They can't work outside of that. Others, they must create that boundary. They must create a boundary between their family and their creativity. What that demands is, though, that the family understands that the creativity is going to need to take first place sometimes, meaning that creativity is going to take that person away for periods of time, whether it is to do a production or whether it's to go do a series of works. And what I mean is physically, an artist, when they have a show that's coming up, physically, they disappear. I disappear. Like when I really need to do a show, there's a point in time where I am not available at all. I have to be. And that is anybody that will know me, they'll know, and I let them know I'm about to disappear because I'm going dark, basically, is what I say. I need to go and just immerse into this. and people who are in television and production, they're there, not there for a few hours and go home and have a weekend. When they're in a television production, assistant director, all actors, they're there for 6 months, basically all the time. Yeah, they go home and sleep and they come back, but they go home and go to sleep, and it's 18 hours a day. And some of those production assistants and some of those assistant directors and some of the actors, they're there all the time. I've experienced just a few of those sets, like I think it was The Walking Dead, is I got to be around that for a little while because I was friends with one of the assistant directors for that show and a couple of the actors. And it is like, it's like a world. They're like a camp. And it is just a whole environment. They've got food, they've got housing, they've got everything. And it's just, they are living there for the time that they're shooting because they shoot everything for the entire season all at one time. So it's a life that they are there, and their families understand that that's what they're going to be doing for the next 6 weeks to 3 months to 4 months at a time. Others, they can't do that. They don't want to do that, and that's not their life. And you make those choices, and all of that is valid. It's fine. But you only know that if you understand what's important to you. You have to know those things. And sometimes you discover that through trial and error, and other times you can come to those realizations by just sitting with yourself and going, what is it that is important to me? So over the next couple of years, when you're being asked to produce your own work and do things that are beyond the classwork that you do, because really the classwork is training exercises. The classwork that you do, all of the rehearsals and all of the courseworks and all of the projects, those are meant to inspire and provoke you to do your own work, to make work that is important to you. The classwork itself isn't 100% your work anyway. It's, again, the work that has been designed as a curriculum to teach you and move you along a path. That's the vehicle. The real stuff that you're going to be developing should be things that are motivated by your intentions and your true interests. Because the stuff you're working on in class are training exercises. They're not going to make you masters of a technique by any means, because you're certainly not doing it long enough to be doing that. They're meant to introduce you to things that then may provoke you to do further. I teach Photoshop, for example. I'm not the only one here that teaches Photoshop, but I do teach Photoshop, and I don't teach the software. I wouldn't be so arrogant to think I could teach the software to you. What I do is I teach you how to learn the software. That's the best that I can do, because I can't teach you the software. It's too large, it's too complex, and there are too many things. If I were to try to go through there, you would, on the one hand, be just bored, and on the other hand, be overwhelmed. So what I do is I teach you how to learn it so that you then can go and apply that to whatever it is that you need Photoshop to do for you. And so we talk about the systems and the methodology behind how it works, rather than just the tools. Here's a filter, here's a tool to use. That's what we're talking about, the difference between a technique and a concept, or a method and a true sort of idea. Is what is your intention and how are you going to apply something, rather than just here's the thing itself. So there are lots of different ways in which you manage this sort of internal questioning. There are exercises that you do even to do that. Some people do meditation to get to know. They do yoga, they do exercises and things like that, physical exercises, just to kind of calibrate themselves. Some people do something called daily practice, which is very much like schoolwork. When I say some people, I mean like professionals, people like me. I do a daily practice, which is just random photography in the morning time when I'm having my coffee. I have studio in my whole house is a studio, my studio, but I make photography for no particular reason, but to just be doing something creative in the morning, because it's a good way for me to be in a positive mode for the day, because I'm doing something that is rewarding the very first thing. You know, I don't want to get up and do something that is awful to do first thing. I want to do something that is rewarding to me, and that's rewarding to me. So daily practice is one of those things. It doesn't have to be something that's complex. One of my daily practices used to be, when I lived in Savannah, was I made photographs on my way to walk to school. I knew I had to do a daily practice. It was started out as an assignment in what was called a personal vision class. And we were asked to develop a daily practice, something we did outside, and it was only ourselves, and it was meant to be in our spare time. And we all know we have no spare time, so we have to find in between gaps. So I decided, instead of riding my bike to school, which is what I used to do, I walked, which took an extra 15 minutes, which made it, instead of 15 minutes to ride my bike, it took a half an hour to walk. Now I had that half hour to make photographs. So I had to add 15 minutes to gain a half an hour to make photographs. So you see, I sacrificed 15 minutes to gain a half an hour to have a practice. See how that works? Sometimes it's really cool when you can think of those little moments that you can steal, and suddenly it feels like, oh, wait a minute, now I have a lot more time. So that daily practice was, I just made photographs walking. I didn't necessarily slow down. I just kind of knew I was going to take a different path each day. I made photographs every single day, a roll of film, because I shot roll film at the time. Shot a roll of film every day, 5 days a week, just roll of film. And during lunch hour, I would develop it and hang it there, and I would have a lot of film. Eventually, I had a lot of rolls of film that I was looking at. That stuff wound up becoming the portfolio that I used to get into graduate school for. That has ended up being the source material that became the material that allowed me to go to graduate school, not just for free, but they paid me to go to graduate school. I got a scholarship and stipend, and meaning I got a paycheck each month to go to school from the school. So those are the kinds of things that sort of work their way, all because I stole 15 minutes by walking instead of riding my bike. It's those little things that are remarkable, how they can transform your life. I didn't know. It was an assignment at first, but then I started to realize, wait, this is something really valuable that I could use. I didn't know it was going to translate into that. I couldn't have known, because I was still an undergraduate when I started doing it, and it was 2-year gap between when I finished undergraduate and went to graduate school. Because one of my professors said, don't go to graduate school right away. Go and do stuff. You need to learn and grow and all of that stuff before going to graduate school. You don't even know if you want to be in graduate school. You have to have an intention to go to graduate school. It's not just go. You have to know what you're going to be giving the school. You have to give something to the school. So there were a lot of things that I had to learn, because I was really young when I finished my undergraduate, because I finished high school early. Anyway, this daily practice, that's another way to sort of exercise. Meditation, listening to music. Most of you have probably heard of binaural music. That's a way to sort of sit and listen and just let the music get into your body, kind of thing. Music that is meant to sort of interact with your nervous system and so on. Those are ways in which you can just kind of bring yourself to I don't want to say another consciousness, but just to let things sort of move away. Find yourself in a place where you can actually think. What it is, it's moving things aside so you can get out of your own way. That's really the practice that it takes in order to become accustomed to what is necessary to get into the mode of creativity, so that you are not thinking about your goal. You are simply being in the moment when you're doing your work, whether it's a performance and you're in your work, you're in the mode right there. You're not thinking about the lines, you're not thinking about the music, you're just there. And it is you, and it is what is happening, and that's it, that's all that's happening. Or you're in the work, you're working, you are making photographs, for instance, and there's nothing else. All there is this thing in front of you, and you are working. Anyone that got a chance to see our performance, that's a lot about what that performance was about, was to pull the curtain back and to show people what that's like. And for 2 hours, Ryan and I, we did that. I was just looking there for several hours, just looking at a tank and through a camera. That is a form of meditation, and it's work. He was doing the same thing, only with audio and listening and responding to what was around us. That's not easy, and it takes practice. So we have to have practice exercises. I have a practice exercise for us to do tonight, and it involves some very plain and simple things. We did this in my acting workshops. Just a short thing. When I first started college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I knew that creativity had needed to be something to do with it, but I wasn't sure. Fortunately, I was accepted to a school of the arts, which was a lot like what we're building here. It's no accident that I'm leading this school that is meant to encompass a lot of different areas, because that's what I basically grew up on, is an environment where all of it was happening and everyone had access to all of it. And that's where you can really like bust out and grow. So I was going to be a film actor. I wanted to be in movies. I wanted to be an actor in the movies, and that's what I wanted to do. And this place, they had acting for the camera, but there was also stage acting and so on. So I, clearly did all the acting classes. I was doing acting classes, performance for the camera, performance for stage, and it was character development. And part of it was these strange exercises where you're laying on the floor and breathing, and you do the improvisation stuff and so on and so forth. And one of the exercises were that we had these characters that we would get scripts for, and we'd read about the characters, and then we would do free writing with that character in our minds. So what we would do is we would have these sheets of paper and giant markers. I mean, like big, like markers like this, and sheets of paper like this. And we did, for 20 minutes, we wrote words, not sentences, not even thinking. We wrote words without stopping writing words. That's the point, is you don't write a word and then think of another word. You simply start your hand moving, and you don't stop your hand moving. It doesn't matter what word you're writing. That's the point. We imagined our character, who we were supposed to be, and we just started writing words from there. That's what we were doing. And what we were doing is we were kind of working through like how we were envisioning and what our interpretation was, and how getting underneath and out all of the cliche and all of the sort of, basically, how those gold miners, how they have the sand and they're sifting like this. That's basically what you're doing to your head. You're just sifting through all of this stuff. So we write all these words. Sometimes we'd write a big word just because it was, bigger and smaller. And sometimes we repeated words if that happened to come up or whatever. The whole point of the exercise was to write and not stop writing. That was the real point. That was the only rule. Start, don't stop writing. Even if the next word is don't or I, you just keep writing. You don't stop writing. Your hand will form another letter, another word. You just keep writing. You don't have to write fast. You just have to keep writing. And the idea is you're not thinking about words. You're just letting your hand move. And the next thing that shows up is what you're doing. This is a psychological exercise as well. There's all kinds of different things. It's done in psychology. This free writing forms what ends up being something called a word cloud. You ever heard of a word cloud before? It basically is not words that are, it's not something where you're writing the words and they're going in a line like this. You're not asked to do that. You're just writing a word, and then you're writing a word, and you're writing a word, and you're writing a word, and writing a word. In fact, you know, I've been in these sessions where the facilitator said, okay, rotate, and you rotate your paper deliberately so that you are not writing in straight lines. You're not allowed to write more than 2 words at a, you know, that are conjoined, meaning you're not writing sentences. So you can write something like, you know, add on or something like that, but you can't write like, and then the 3 words are out of bounds or something like that. You're just writing 2 words or 1 word. So once we go through about 10 minutes of that, you're going to get really, really frustrated because you're going to be like, I don't know what else to write. And because you're writing with such a clumsy big thing, the paper is going to start to fill up and you're going to start to run out of room. So you're going to start writing smaller and you're going to start to get cramped and find places to write the next word because you're filling the page up now. It's becoming a little bit more difficult. And so now you're writing, but what's happened at this point is your brain has understood that this is now something you're going to continue to do. And the intent is that the part of your mind that says it's silly, that says this is dumb, when I write, it needs to make sense. When I'm writing, I need to know what I'm writing. I can't just sit there and write. That part of your mind that wants to know what's going on and that is there to protect you for that, wants you to make sense of things. It's a good part. All parts are good. That part, we want to put it to sleep a little bit. We want it to kind of take a rest, take a moment for itself, and let us kind of play around a little bit. We're going to excuse that one and say, it's okay, we're safe. Just go sit over here. No one else is going to see this unless you show it to them. These are just words. Afterward, we have a little bit of an exercise that you do to look at what you have done. The idea isn't artwork. The idea isn't like to make poetry. The idea is really to unload a bunch of stuff and then afterward observe. Not make judgments, not to decide this or that, but just, look at that. What happened? What are you seeing? What did you do in those 20 minutes? What happened naturally? It's like remembering a dream. There are points at which you remember very clearly, but sometimes you project. You start saying parts of a dream that really didn't happen. You're just filling in the blank a little bit. That's where we don't want to go. That's the part of your brain that wants to make sense of stuff that is going to try to get in the way and want you to write sentences instead of just keeping it blank. Because of that, I want to keep that brain a little bit occupied. So I am going to play some repetitive music so that your other brain will be not to entertain you, but just to keep it occupied just a little bit so there won't be just dead silence for us. The music isn't meant to influence you one way or another. It's meant to just be in the background there, but it is meant to be just enough to keep that other side to going like, hey, what is that? You know, to keep it distracted only just for a moment so that you can get to doing what you want to do. This mindfulness is difficult to get into. This is not easy. I'm not telling you that this is a super easy thing to do. It takes practice to do it really fluidly and really well. And it takes everybody some time to get into it, no matter how many times you've done it. It takes several minutes to even just get into it. The first couple of things you write, when we say, okay, go, you're going to be like frozen a lot of people. Or you'll start writing and you're going, wait, I'm not supposed to, you're going to be talking to yourself. I'm not supposed to know what I'm writing. And that is, again, that part of your brain that says, I want to influence the creativity. And the creativity is going, leave me alone. Let me just do this thing. We want to be able to train that part of us to go sit over there for a moment and let us do the stuff that we really do know how to do well. And that is the creative part of it. And allow those two parts eventually to get to know each other so that you can understand what is important to you. Because only when you have that kind of balance, that's what I'm talking about is what Rilke was saying, going within yourself and asking the question. I'm talking about methodologies of doing that. Not just that you do it, but here's how you do that, or at least ways of doing it. So I'm not just kind of creating and throwing out this existential exercise. What I'm doing is I'm showing you ways in which you do what we're saying you probably need to do, is to figure out what is important to you so you can begin to create your own content, your own intentions when you're doing your stuff. How do you do that? You know, you don't just poof, start doing it because somebody tells you. You have to like be in a position to be able to do that. Put yourself in a position to do that. These are things you can do to put yourself in that situation. And those people that do these things are the people that I know who have managed to create lives for themselves in this career. I'm not saying that people that don't do this stuff haven't managed to create lives, but I do know that the people I know that are satisfied in what they're doing, they all do one variation of this or another. That's one of the ways that that I and a lot of others survived those first couple of years out of school, is because we were empowered enough to know, okay, so I know what's important to me, and I know that whatever sacrifice I'm making to do this job or this odd thing, that I'm going to find what I'm looking for because I know what my intention is, how I want to live. And so I know this is only temporary. Whatever job I'm doing, I know I'm only going to be doing it for a little while because I'm going to continue looking for what is important to me. And I know what I'm looking for. Then it's just, they're just there they're like a temporary, like I'm going to go there so that they can, pay my bills for me. I'll give them a little bit of my time from 7 o'clock at night to 4 in the morning, which is what I did, in one of my jobs is overnight, which was kind of cool. So has anybody done this kind of thing before? Free writing? Yeah. Was it in like one of these kind of workshops that I was talking about?
It's usually in a lot of, I've done it for creative writing in English, I've done it for theater.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of cool things that we did in our like acting 1 class and so on. It was like bizarre stuff. Like, have you guys done the trust exercises where you lead someone who's blindfolded, but you can't touch them? You're like, one person's blindfolded, the other one is calling out directions. And the person who's calling out directions is in front of them, but you're not allowed to touch the person who's blindfolded. And so the blindfolded person must trust the other person, and the other person must be clear in what they're telling this person to do. So it's this sort of, on the one hand, communication exercise, and the other is a trust exercise. It's kind of cool. I don't know. It's sort of cool to watch because you see people wandering. Can you imagine people wandering around the courtyard with blindfolds going, oh, I don't know where I'm going. Now don't turn left, turn left, turn left. Anyway, okay, so those people that are on the Zoom, you can participate too. What you'll need is a piece of paper of any kind. It doesn't have to be big like this, and a big pen, like a Sharpie works really well. I got these giant Expos, which are dry erase, but they're okay. You can use those too. A big pen. The reason is because I don't want it to be like you sitting here writing. I want it to be goofy. I want it to feel like like it's too big for you to be writing with. So big marker will feel like, oh, wow, you can't write small with this. You have to write it bigger with these. So instead of me walking around, how about everybody just come up and grab like a sheet of paper or two, and then one of these marker pens here, and I'll set up the sound.
I found five. I found five connected.
Okay. Now, again, so the idea is I'm going to set a timer for 20 minutes. And the idea here is to just, like I said, when I start the timer, just start writing. You're not writing words in sentences or anything like that. You're not drawing pictures. You're just writing words. They don't even have to come to your head. Just start writing a letter and let it form into a word. Then write another letter, then write another word, so on and so forth. You're not necessarily writing lines. You can write a word, turn the paper, write a word, turn the paper, write a word. I suggest doing that for the first several words so that you get out of like trying to write in a line of words. Write something, turn the page, write something, turn the page, write something, turn the page. That way you're not writing in a clump of things. 2 words would be the most to write together at once. Don't try to write like 5 words at a time. If you feel like you want to write something bigger, you're writing and suddenly you make this giant G, that's fine. That's because something inside you said make a giant G, right? Or if it's small and it's kind of all jumbled, don't worry if it's illegible. Don't worry about that. It's you that's going to need to see these things. If you want to even circle something, that sometimes happens where you're like, oh, circle, and you're just in the middle of something. That happens. So the idea is that we want to think as little as possible and simply just do. Just let your hand move. And we're forming letters with them. Now I'm going to play this music, which again is sort of not necessarily repetitive, but it is it's meant to be a sort of rhythmic kind of situation, just to break the air for everybody. So it's not meant to be anything special, like to induce anything, or it's not necessarily to comment on the music. It's just meant to cut through the silence so that it doesn't create a big tense, energy in the room that way. Okay. All right. So let us start the timer. And because the time is really important, like being able to time it is actually an important thing. Okay, so I'm going to go to the timer. We'll set this for and I'm telling you, 20 minutes is going to feel like it's forever. So